Poilievre has no security clearance, and I wonder why he's able to make security issue recommendations. That's one of the questions I have. So, Cal, what do you feel should be the requirements of any member of parliament, especially a leader of parliament, to have a voice and demand that any group or foreign entity be labeled a terrorist organization? That's a question I have, folks.
Well, you got to give Poilievre credit. He knows everything. Everything. He knows everything that's going on everywhere, and he's prepared to criticize it without facts or any kind of common sense. The conservatives aren't going to be hanging on to him for long. They're going to dump him. They get the long
And
knives
rightly
out.
so, I think. I mean, if you're going to recommend that a terrorist organization be labeled in our parliament, I mean, the first group of people that should be brought forward in the parliament is the Republican terrorist group running the U.S. If you're going to really label a terrorist organization, the world knows that they're a regime of terrorists. Whereas this demand that Poilievre has made for the, what is it, the cat, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Let me get, Kataib Hezbollah. He's come out formally saying it needs to be declared a terrorist party. And when you start looking into it, yeah, the U.S., Japan, and who else has labeled them that? Let me see here. See if I can
Well, let's
find it.
let's
I
look at
can't even
Let's
find. There's only 3 or 4 places ever labeled them as terrorist organizations.
let's look at Canada. Canada has a web page called Public Safety Canada that currently listed entities that have been banned or in Canada. Poilievre doesn't need a securities clearance to look at that page because I just
Right.
pulled it up. And guess what? Hezbollah's on it. So
Yes.
what he's doing is bullshitting in order to get support. Now, Poilievre isn't stupid. At least I'm presuming he's not stupid. So what he does know is that Hezbollah has already been banned. But
Right.
what he's trying to do is convince his followers that he's out in front of this issue and calling for it to be banned when it already is banned because he knows the people that will swallow that are stupider than he is. And
That's true.
I don't like the word stupid, use the word stupid, but you got to give cheers to Poilievre because you know his backers, even if there's only 18% of them in Canada, cheers to them.
But it seems to be that he's catering to the whims of the Trump regime, and he's a bootlicker of Trump because this is being brought out at a time when Iran is holding all the aces and cards against his supporter Trump regime, and that shows us that there's foreign influence within the conservative movement, and it's right at the top. And the leadership of the federal conservative party is being unduly influenced by foreign actors. And with security clearance or not, they're still being influenced. And this is something that's a concern for me as an Albertan, is to see that the conservative movement is controlled and manipulated by the money of the wealthy and of the Republican regime in the U.S. And Hezbollah is a terrorist organization already labeled as such. If you're going to recommend designations of terrorists on an organization, I recommend that we stand up and label the Republican Party as a terrorist party. Look at what they've done. They've done a cover-up for child sex trafficking rings. They've done a cover-up for stock market manipulations and profiteering. They've done cover-up for ICE agents killing people, civilians on the streets of the U.S. They've done cover-up for war crimes on the open seas, and they've done war crimes against humanity by bombing a school of young girls. They have no reason not to be labeled an international terrorist organization. And if Poilievre is going to have any credibility, that's the type of recommendation you make to the public and to the House of Parliament in Canada, is to actually designate terrorists of all stripes as terrorist organizations. And that's
So
something that,
let's go and look at why are they designated as a terrorist organization. Essentially, they're fighting the Israelis right now in
right,
Lebanon. So they didn't invade Israel. Israel invaded them. And so they're providing an armed resistance to a genocidal government, and they're trying to protect their citizens against the atrocities that the Israelis are doing to them. So when you look at it from that perspective, who is the terrorist? And
it's a
today, when you
real
look
fine
at it,
line to say who
no,
is
it's
and
not a
isn't.
fine line. It's not a fine line at all. Today, Israel is defying Trump's peace deal and
Right.
killing people in Gaza. So 20 the death toll over the weekend, this weekend, was 26 people,
Wow.
Palestinians killed by Israelis. So who are the terrorists?
That's
So
a real
I think
good question.
Poilievre should look in the mirror and shut up, because first of all, they're not allowed in Canada to begin with. So there's nothing to be gained by following his recommendations. He's
Right.
foolish. And yes, the Iranians are backing the Hezbollah, but the Americans are backing the Israelis. So,
And why isn't
what do
he
you
putting
expect?
Israel as a terrorist state
Exactly,
before our
because
parliament?
he gets money from
That's right.
them.
So he who has the money and he who has the power of the military determine who is a terrorist organization and who isn't. And that's a problem, and that's when you have a weak United Nations. And back to my world government, we need that to ensure that rogue states and regimes are properly labeled. And when is it you become a terrorist? When you're defending your country and defending women, children from being executed by other regimes wantingly, and we know that are crimes against humanity. Is the wild, wild west scenario where the bad guy steps in and protects the women and children? Is he labeled the terrorist, or is it he labeled the savior? I mean, the U.S. has all these wild west stories of the good and the bad and the ugly, and yet when it comes to terrorism on an international stage, they do not properly label terrorist acts and participate in many acts that I would label as terrorist acts. So I think a world government is required because we have too many rogue regimes, too many people trying to defend against terrorist acts against humanity, women, children, and then being labeled terrorists when you try to protect women and children from acts of terrorism. I think that's time to have a world government and set down new regulations and parameters that prevent this type of action, and a world military power that can enforce laws upon rogue regimes and rogue entities. If the Hezbollah are a terrorist organization under a world government, they could be properly dealt with. If the Israelis are labeled a terrorist organization under a world government, they could be dealt with because the world government would have the resources and the ability to deal with them. So that's an issue I have, and I think who's labeling who a terrorist is my question, and what gives Poilievre the right to label anybody a terrorist when he refuses to even get security clearance. So that's a real issue I have, is you got the tail wagging the dog, as they say, and this dog hasn't even been licensed to wag its tail. He's doing it on behalf of another group of influencers, which are the United States and the wealth of the money that propped up the Republican terrorist regime in the U.S. So back to the, reality. Should Poilievre have the right to label anybody a terrorist is the question I have for you.
Well, he's just wasting airspace.
Yeah.
And he's trying to see one of the problems with being in the opposition in Canada is you criticize all the time. That's all you can do. You cannot give constructive input into anything, and any attempt in order to allow a bipartisan conversation between conservatives and liberals doesn't go anywhere. And so Poilievre has been the attack dog, and he was a very efficient one against Trudeau. He managed to turn a lot of people against Trudeau. He's been unable to dent Carney. And
Yeah.
so now he has to bring up, side arguments like, Hezbollah is already banned in Canada. They can't raise money here. They're not allowed in the country. So what do you want to do? You want Canada to stand up and say, oh yeah, we'll now call them a terrorist organization. He's wasting print space to give the conservative news something to report,
But
even if it's old news.
he's also feeding into a campaign of Trumpism, because by saying that Canada isn't banning terrorist organizations, he's feeding into the hostility of Trump and the Western separatist movement. And that's something that is almost treasonous when you're spouting in a rhetoric that is designed to tear the country apart. That is rhetoric that is dangerous to the country, and for many reasons. And I think when you're a party leader, you have to be more cautious on what you're spouting for rhetoric, because this divisive rhetoric is only feeding the enemies of Canada. The United States said they want more excuses to make Canada a 51st state, even if they have to invade. And by telling the U.S. and the world that we are in favor of terrorist organizations like Hezbollah, and that's false information, that's creating terrorist acts within our own country, because you're spouting rhetoric that is not true. And it can undermine the foundations of Canada and spark the separatist movement or the takeover by foreign powers like the United States. And you're feeding them the rhetoric that may allow them to attack Canada. And I think that's treason in its finest. And there's a fine line between what Poilievre is doing and what treason is defined as. So, he's walking a tightrope act that is not in the benefit of Canada. And I think Canadians are starting to see that.
I think they should keep him blabbing away.
Yeah.
Because the more he talks, the lower the opinion polls go against both the Conservative Party and Poilievre. All he's doing is sinking the ship.
Yes, we're
Just
not as
let him-
uneducated as the U.S. We have a higher standard of education, so eventually intellect will rule the roost in Canada, where in the U.S. the uneducated rule the roost because there's more of them than there are educated. That's not the case in Canada. So there is a reason we have a higher education standard, and it shows in our politics. And the Conservatives always want to take away our education funding so that we follow the model of the U.S. lack of education. Now, I wanted to swing the conversation a bit. When you have a opposition leader catering to foreign powers and the rhetoric and marketing of that foreign power, it can interfere with foreign affairs of a country like Canada. Canada used to be known as the peacekeeper of the world, and conservatives swung that away by supporting war with the United States. My question is, would Poilievre in power prevent Canada from supplying Ukraine women with Canadian-designed body armor? And I say probably, because the U.S. does everything to withhold weapons and armament to the Ukraine, and it's clear that Trump has a desire to see Ukraine fall and fail against his buddy Putin. So there's an article in CBC, came out a day ago. It's on Ukraine's front lines, female soldiers testing Canadian-designed body armor, a story by CBC Radio Canada. Ukrainian soldiers fighting on the front lines of Russia's war are now testing curved body armor designed specifically for women so they're better protected against bullets, shrapnel, and drone strikes. Now this, I think, is a very important piece of consideration. When Poilievre is so anti-women and shows, he's in support of the Republican Party, which is taking away women's rights in the U.S., I see that this is something where Canada should be proud that our Liberal government has backed companies and the support of Ukrainian women soldiers fighting on the front line. And women body structures are very different than men, and they need proper protection. Saying that women could fit into a men's small body armament is ignorant of the shape and design of women's body. And personally, I think women are participating in the front lines because women are the ones that are at most risk if the country falls. When the Russians took over towns and villages, it was the women that were raped and had to watch their husbands and sons being executed, and horrific crimes against humanity. And women have the ability now to stand and fight as well as men, and they can run drones and everything else, but they should have the access to proper body armament. And I'm proud that Canada is supplying this to them in the hopes that it will save lives and mitigate the damages from shrapnel and bullet injuries, etc. So even the UK has sent over, donated 2,000 sets of body armament to Ukraine for curved female-specific ballistic plates by Canadian company NP Aerospace, paired with vest carriers designed by Logistics Unicorp, also based in Canada. So Canada is taking a lead role in supplying armament, and I think Poilievre would block that because of his associations with the United States. And in that regard, I wonder how Poilievre would have held up to cutting a deal with Ukraine to manufacture drones and the implications of that, because the minute the Carney and the Liberal government allowed Canadian industry to manufacture drones in conjunction with Ukraine, Russia stepped in and imposed, warnings to Canada about the Ukraine agreement. And that is a basic threat by Russia, saying you shouldn't be helping Ukraine. And Trump doesn't want to help Ukraine because of the influence of Putin on Trump. I don't know what Putin has on Trump, but I'm pretty sure it has to do with young girls and prostitutes in hotel rooms from his visits to the Kremlin, where they were all videotaped. And I guess time will tell on that. But I question Poilievre, what would have happened if we had him as leader? Would we have cut a deal with drone technology from Ukraine? And I'd say no. The conservative movement is against giving aid out to Ukraine because they side with the Israelis a lot and are into war crimes, as far as I can see, by siding with the Israelis. And Russia is committing war crimes in Ukraine. So I have questions there. I'm sure our audience could maybe answer some of those questions. And what do you feel? Are you proud that Canada has now stepped up on the international scale and helping manufacture drones? I mean, it's for our own protection too from the U.S. And I think it's a great deal. And I'm just not sure what a conservative movement would have done in that regard.
And you ran out of gas.
Yeah,
Well,
it's too expensive
apparently,
at the pump, and I just run out.
apparently, apparently, what the Russians said is that the Canadians are trying to profit from the war by selling more materials. Is what I think the point was. And apparently, Canada has committed over $25.5 billion to the Ukraine already.
Oh,
Europe has donated $202 billion to the Ukraine already. America, I think they were almost up to 200 billion in more spending on the Ukraine already. So it's not like people aren't supporting the Ukraine with their money. So I would you expect anything else? What are the Russians going to say? Give them your
yeah,
best technology because it sucks.
yeah.
You know,
I mean, the war machine is all about money, and Russia makes money
yes,
off their war machine. U.S. makes money off their war machine. UK makes money off of wars. France makes money off of wars. Uh, Iran makes money off of war supplying Shaheeds to Russia. So there is an international market of profiteering on weaponry. And look at the cost of a missile. I mean, you're not talking thousands of dollars. You're talking millions of dollars. So there is huge profits in it, but the drone industry is not as expensive for building armament, and Canada needs to be involved in the drone technology, and I think this is something that under a conservative movement would have been blocked because they seem to align with the wealthy people, the oligarchs, and the money people around the world for their politics. And, it's something we have to consider is alignment. So I don't know. I have no faith in conservative movements because they resemble the Republican conservative movement of pedophile protectors in the U.S. And you see that uh, religious affiliation under the guise of politics and the wealthy paying for such. We're not getting proper representation, therefore we don't really have a democracy. We have what's called a pseudo-democracy where money is telling us what to do and what happens. So that's why I thought it was important to discuss Poilievre coming out saying, demanding uh, Hezbollah be labeled a terrorist organization, and the timing of such was important to discuss. I'm still not sure what the motivation for it was, but I'm sure it will come out in the news someday. The divisiveness between Canada and the U.S., I've seen an article here that came out. It was put out by Jim Bronskill with the Canadian Press. It says, some Canadians tell Carney Ottawa's spelling protocol should lean British, which I think it should. I think Canadian English is different than the American English, and we should protect our dialogue and spelling of words and preferentially go with the British spelling of words. And I guess I have a question for Poilievre. How do you feel we should spell our English words? Should we be Canadian English or should we be American English? And I think conservatives should all be asked that question because I think if we look at some of their rhetoric and all their propaganda that's being used in their election campaigns, that's all American language. That's not Canadian language. So as a Canadian,
Corey, where'd you ever come up with this?
hey,
Like where here,
I'm
let me give you an example.
okay.
It's BEER, not BEIR or BERE. But who cares? Like
Well,
like who cares how you spell it? And what's going to happen is because the spell checkers are all American spell checkers, Canadians aren't going to learn to spell color with a U,
well,
and
that's
neighbor
what
with
I'm
a
trying to
U.
say is we need to protect our language from the American AI program.
The
And
Quebecers
that's an
the
important
Quebecers
consideration.
the Quebecers spell gas with a Z. Boy,
Yes,
that really makes that is a huge cultural difference. That's
yes,
worth
it does. And
billions in transfer payments.
I think language is important. It shows a distinction in culture. It's just like dance is an important part of culture. It shows a distinction in the ideology of the interaction of people on a dance floor. The
I knew you were going
Americans are
somewhere with this.
arrogant. You see the Americans arrogant, ignorant, abusive, and it shows in their style of dance. They push people around. They figure you should be watching them and you shouldn't be participating unless you're doing like them, and don't upstage them. Whereas Canadian dance, which I'm the expert in, is about having fun with everybody and not causing abuse on the dance floor and being aggressive and all sorts of things. It's a social activity. And there's a huge difference, but that's cultural. And it also reflects in your language because you got to remember we are a multicultural country. And to not be multicultural and start being Americanized is an affront against our culture in its essence. And I think the language should be protected. And I think that's where the federal government needs to step in and have protocols in place for spell checkers over the internet in Canada to use the Canadian dictionary and the English dictionary, not the American bastardized dictionary for promoting propaganda, promoting, taking away a women's rights, protecting pedophiles and covering up Epstein files and committing war crimes, and all in the name of the American language. So I think, yes, we need to protect our language here and quit allowing American propaganda language to infiltrate our language and culture here. So that's my take on it. I mean, I'm sure people have different opinions on it. And being a multicultural country, would you like it to be all Americanized? That's the question I have for you folks that are watching. Although our topic shifted in this podcast, I think it's an interesting spin. And Poilievre speaks with American forked tongue. And that's my point, is he does speak with a forked tongue. He speaks with American English, and he speaks with American definitions, and all his advertising is American style advertising. That's not Canadian, folks. And I think that I'm calling him out. Be Canadian and use the Canadian language, not the American language, and maybe you'll get some respect. But he won't. He is Americanized. And that's foreign influence, and that's why he probably doesn't want to do a security clearance check. That's my take. My opinion.
I think if he wants to get some respect, what he has to do is acknowledge good ideas when they're presented, and support them in a positive manner. It's like the coach that continually berates his athlete. They just don't get the best performance out of the team. And he's a team of one, and it shows, and he's got it. The Conservatives have to get rid of him. They have to
King
get rid of it.
Poilievre, he'd rule with the head down, I mean, that's why he idolizes Trump. It's from the head down, right? So King Poilievre would want to rule, everybody does exactly as he says, or else you're removed. And that's not the type of person we want in politics. We like team players. But when you start using the propaganda and American English in your advertising, guess what? You're idolizing a king. And we might have to have a No King's Day here to prevent Poilievre from becoming king of the Conservative Party like he wants to be. And that's
I
the
don't.
underlying
Who
issue.
cares? Who cares? Why catch an elephant when it's falling? You know,
Well,
you just let it continue to fall.
could make a big
In fact,
crater
in
when it
fact, I
falls.
feel bad criticizing the man because I it should be beneath people to criticize people that have that kind of
Wow.
disability.
Yeah,
It's
I agree with you. We shouldn't be targeting people with disabilities, and I'm sorry for all you people that have disabilities that like Poilievre, meaning that you're members of the conservative American English campaign propaganda machine. I'm sorry for your disability. That would include the, convoy movement. It would include the separatists, fight. What do they call them? Fighters for separatism or whatever. Yeah, it's gone to the point of I'm sorry for your disabilities. Um, I think we have subsidized grants for education where you could actually go back to school and try to learn more about Canada and any subject you like. University is free, isn't it? Oh, sorry, I forgot. It's free if you're First Nation. You can go to university for free. But you can be adopted, and if you're adopted by a First Nations family, you can go to university for free. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe Poilievre, you should get adopted and go to university for free. You went for 4 years on a degree of what? Yeah. Okay, I'm getting out of here before I stick my other foot in my mouth.
One of the problems, Corey, is that some people just can't be educated, and to argue with them just makes one dumber than they are. Like there are certain points that people are stuck on, and if you look in the U.S. where 30%, 35% of the people still support Trump,
Yeah.
when all the evidence out there suggests that the man is a stealing, thieving lunatic, you can't
were
even
being kind with that definition.
you can't even talk. You can't talk to those people. You'll never convince them otherwise.
No.
It's like Jamestown where the people swallowed the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Like they willingly lined up and drank Kool-Aid with cyanide in it. And the thing is, the world's full of examples like that, and Trump is just one of them.
Yeah, well, look at me. I mean, I'm hard to convince, but you've changed my mind on a few things over the years. Not the first time,
sure.
It won't be the last, but I am pretty stubborn.
Sure.
But we do our research. Before we make an opinion, we make sure we've researched every aspect of it we can. And we're open to change. We're subject to change. I've changed my idea on a few things over the years. Not many, but a few. And when you give me rational thought and rational explanation, I can change my mind, and I'm willing to change my mind, but it takes facts. It doesn't take rhetoric. It takes fact. So.
Or even just say, I understand your point of view, but you're wrong.
Yes. Well, you've told me that a few times. I don't recall telling you you're wrong. Oh, yeah, I do remember calling you. You might want to go check your data again. So I guess it happens both ways. I mean, we're not, saying that you should change your views just because we're saying it. No, you go research it. All I'm saying is open the door to more knowledge, and maybe you'll come up with a different conclusion. And that doesn't happen if you're uneducated or you're ignorant, I guess is the proper word, and not willing to do the work. If you believe what other people tell you and they don't have an education, you're just following the flock, and the flock could walk off a cliff. You'd be with them. Anyway, on that note, let us know what you think.
Corey, one more statistic. Apparently, the same number of people that think Poilievre would be a good prime minister believe the world is flat.
Yeah, oh, yay! Hooray! We're in a flat world. I guess that sums it up. I couldn't. Where'd you find that stat, by the way? That's a good one. So we got a flat world with a flat leader of a flat conservative movement that's flat on the Canadian English. Good. On that note, we're out of here. Oh,
Bye.
we got to find the click button before we're out of here. Okay, share, like, subscribe, and let us know what you think of us. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.
Is it a nice